Welcome everyone. So I bought a new toy for summer, and this is not a well-sorted, one-owner, perfect low mileage, cherry on top car. This is a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon that was poorly modified, and I say poorly because it's just not well sorted out. There are certain things that weren't done correctly on it, and we're gonna fix that, but because of that, it was a really great deal. Now, if you're looking at a Jeep Wrangler and you see the words Rubicon across the hood, it doesn't mean much. You can go on eBay and you can buy this decal for about $10, and you can call your Jeep Wrangler a Rubicon. But if it is actually a Rubicon, it has some really neat features on it. So this is a JK Wrangler, and with the JK Wrangler, this generation of Wrangler, 2007 and onward, they really made a tremendous improvement on the older Jeep Wranglers. You can drive this thing around and still talk to your friends. It has power windows, it has power locks. It is an actual drivable car. And before the JK Wrangler came out, I really didn't like the Wranglers, even though they are so capable on the trail and they would pass me all the time. I just couldn't stand driving them on the street. And that all changed with the JK Wrangler. So that's my brief description about the JK Wrangler and what makes it so good. What doesn't make the JK Wrangler good is that they have been so expensive. We're talking over $20,000 for something like this for a pretty long time. And I finally found one that was super cheap, and so I couldn't pass up on it. And here we are. And so we're gonna go through and take this thing out to the trails, the same thing that I did with the Toyota FJ Cruiser. And of course, with the Jeep Wranglers, we have front and rear solid axles. And this is amazing. It's amazing because a lot of manufacturers have moved over to independent front suspension. When you have a solid axle in the front, like on my old Toyota 80 Series Land Cruiser, you can actually flex over the rocks, and it's just a whole lot more fun. This is going to be a very capable little car. In the front, you can start to see why this car is not in the best shape. The headlights are hazing. It has this terrible grill in it that I need to get rid of. So it's got a nice mount for a winch, but the owner never mounted a winch on it. So I guess that's being left to us now. We're gonna have to put a winch on here. The tires are 35 inches. The lift is a 3.5-inch lift, and with the lift it has the upgraded drive shafts, and so that's really great that I don't have to spend any money on upgrading that stuff, because a lifted JK Wrangler is a very capable car off-road. The other thing, of course, that comes standard on the Rubicons is the lockers, the differential lockers, and that's a big deal. And of course, it also has an electronic sway bar disconnect, but it's broken. It only works sometimes, and so the previous owner installed these manual sway bar disconnects. You pull the pins out and you can remove the sway bar end link from the sway bar, and it's pretty quick. The downside is that you have to get out of the car instead of pressing a button to disconnect the sway bar. The other thing you notice here is that these are the stock fenders and they have just been cut. They're also loose, and that's because the clips on these fenders break a lot, and so this thing's just flapping around here. So you can see that. That's one thing I gotta fix. There's lots of things I gotta fix. The Jeep logo was removed here. You can still see the outline of it. I think I'm gonna put that back on there and remove this grille. And then the paint. The paint is, it's restorable. I'll just say that. I can make the paint look good again. There's enough clear coat on it to make it look good again. It's not oxidizing, but there's lots of spider webbing in the paint, and it just clearly wasn't polished and waxed regularly. And these decals are not looking good. So this Jeep Wrangler actually came from Virginia. I had to get it smogged under a federal smog in California, and then I got it registered here, and that was a pretty easy process. They have to do the VIN verification at the DMV and whatnot. But what I want to show you on the back is it comes with a nice tire carrier. It comes with a nice brake light so that people can see me when I'm slowing down. And the problem with this is that there's no shovel, there's no gas cans, there's no trail jack, and so little things like that mean that the build was never completed. It's sort of just built this way for looks. It seems like the person was not a real intense off-roader. You always need to have a shovel, you always need to have a trail jack, and you also need one of those little tire tools to pull the valve stems out and drop the air pressure. I of course have that stuff, and so I'm going to be bolting that on and cleaning up this paint. That's the most important thing, is this paint was not taken care of. Another big deal with this Wrangler was that it had a hardtop. I really wanted a hardtop because with the JK Wranglers, with the hardtops, they actually drive really quietly on the street. And that's just fantastic. I can actually daily drive this thing. And in fact, I have been driving it because it's really fun to drive it around. And so we should actually go take it out right now. But one more thing before we take it out, I want to show you the sunroof here. So not really a sunroof, but it's a 3-piece hardtop. And I can undo it with a few latches. So all these pieces come off, and then you have an open air Jeep. Going into the Jeep now, you can see that we no longer have the hardtop on, so you can stick your hand out while you're driving. Okay, so if we come up here, you can see that this is a 6-speed manual. You have your transfer case down here. You have the sway bar disconnect here, and all you do is you press that and the sway bar will disconnect. And then you have your differential lock here, and this can lock both the front and the rear differential. And so pretty basic setup, but it also has cruise control and other basic creature comforts like headlights. Headlights are important. And also we are only at 68,291 miles on this car. And of course, we have some nice cloth seats. These are very grippy seats and they hold you in place. And so yeah, overall it's a pretty nice setup for an off-road car. So let's go ahead and test drive it. All right, so we're going on a little test drive here. I took the roof panels off so you can see what it's like to enjoy the open air motoring that comes with the Jeep Wrangler. The car is still surprisingly quiet, which is interesting. I remember driving the older previous generation Jeep Wrangler and going down the freeway and not being able to talk to the person next to me without yelling at them. And so this is just a huge improvement. The manual 6-speed shifts very smoothly. It reminds me of European sports cars in their floppiness. The shifter just kind of flops into gear. The on-road manners are surprisingly good with the Jeep Wrangler, specifically the newer ones. They don't have a ton of body roll. It has this massive sway bar up front, and of course the electronic sway bar disconnect for when you go off-road. So you just press this button down here and it gets rid of the sway bar, which makes a big difference in driving behavior and allows you to easily transition between on the pavement and off the pavement. The acceleration in this car is on par with an economy car, and I guess that's not a negative thing. I'm not saying something negative about the Wrangler there. I'm saying that that's actually pretty good. This car can actually stay up over 70 miles an hour on the freeway without any fuss. And with 35-inch tires, that's pretty great. And so I'm not complaining there. I don't expect this thing to accelerate like a sports car. I just want it to take me to the trails, and then when we get to the trails, I want to be able to go up and over all the obstacles and then drive home again. And I think this car will do that very well, because every time I've been out rock crawling with my FJ Cruiser, when I was being guided through the rocks, these modified Wranglers were able just to hop up and over everything, and it's just super impressive to see these things out there and do what they do. And of course you go out and you check the prices on these things and you say, oh, I can't afford that. The JK Wrangler is just too expensive. It's an amazing off-road car, but it's very expensive. The resale value is incredibly high on this. And so that's one of the major bummers about this car, and that's one of the reasons I have not had the chance to do a Jeep build on this YouTube channel, because of the high residual value of the Jeep Wrangler. But now we have the new JL Jeep Wrangler out, and I think people here in Orange County are getting rid of their older toys and the values are falling off. And so you can pick these things up very reasonably now, and people put a lot of nice parts on them. And there's an airplane going overhead. I don't know if you can hear that, but yeah, a little bit more sound is coming through now that we have this hardtop off. And this is a lot of fun, having the hardtop off. It reminds me of driving the S2000 around, except it's quite a different feeling. I'm up high here. I'm up higher than most other cars because I have this big lift and I have these big 35-inch tires. But even with all this stuff, the drivability, it's really good. Really, really good. So I like this car, and I was really surprised when I got in this car and I saw navigation in here, a nice little radio. it's just cool to see how far the Jeep Wrangler has come, because I've always seen it as such a bare bones car, and this is something that I could drive every day. So yeah, really impressed with it. I'm probably getting sunburned right now, and so I definitely should have left those roof panels on, but it is really fun to drive with the top off here. So I'm going to take some side streets now, because when I got up over 50 miles an hour there was a fair amount of wind noise, and you probably won't be able to hear through this microphone right now with all that wind noise. Another really interesting thing about the Jeep is ergonomically it's not very well designed. The shifter is right here, but you have these buttons right behind the shifter, so the shifter is sort of in the way of the air conditioning controls and the differential lock button and the sway bar button. And then the door locks are on the side, but your window up and down switches right here are right in the center below the radio. And so it sort of seems like that wasn't very well planned out. And so that's one of the things you look at in here and you say, what the heck's going on? Not too much more I can say on that. The other thing about this car is that the fenders are falling off. It has plastic fenders on it with these plastic clips, and when you run them into things, the clips can break and the fenders can fall off. And I showed you that when I did the walk around video, but it's really annoying right now because they're flapping against the side of the car, and that's, you know, one thing I got to fix. I ordered some clips off of Amazon, and I will be putting new flat fenders on this car to make it look a little nicer. But as far as power goes, this thing does have enough power to move its own weight, but I would say that it is just enough power to move its own weight and nothing more. This engine is not very exciting. It has slightly over 200 horsepower. I think it was something like 202 horsepower, which is pretty insignificant. And so it's just enough to move the car, and when you switch the transfer case down into low gear, it's just enough to pull this car up and over the rocks. And so all in all, I do like this car, but I would like a little bit more power. And so that's one of the disappointing things about it. Alright, so that's pretty much it. That's all I got for you on this Jeep Wrangler as far as the overview goes. I'm going to be turning this car into an off-road toy, and it's sort of already built. I just need to add a few things like the winch, some of the recovery tools, mainly a shovel and a trail jack, and then probably some tools. Anyways, really basic stuff. This Jeep doesn't need much. It has most of the hard stuff already done to it, but the build is a little bit incomplete. So that's all I have for you guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you enjoy your car.